In this episode of Living Indie Grind, I talk with Wannibe Manisha. We had over an hour-long conversation about being an indie dev and YouTuber. We laughed, we cried, we discovered the meaning of life. At the end, Barack Obama gave a speech about how it was the greatest podcast in the world. Unfortunately, I did not record the audio of our conversation, but Manisha was nice enough to re-record. So what you're about to watch is the re-recorded version, which is why it's a bit shorter than usual. This is not the greatest podcast in the world, no. This is just a tribute.
This is not a podcast, this is a theme song.
How do you do? It's Mr. Moo. How you doing? This is Living Indie Grind, because if you want to make the game, you have to be living in the grind. I'm hoping someone's going to get that pun one of these days. Anyway, today I have Wannibe Manisha with me. Manisha, welcome.
Hello.
So you want to introduce yourself, maybe talk about some projects that you're working on or something like that?
Sure. So my name is Manisha. I have a channel called Wannibe Manisha, where I've just been uploading my game dev adventures, I'd like to call it. I just showcase things that I make on game jams or just projects that I'm working on. It's usually a hobby, game dev, for me. I work as a full-time software engineer in the daytime. So yeah, that's about it.
Cool. And how did you get into game dev?
Well, game dev has been like an on and off thing for the past, I'd say, 8 years. So I started sometime in high school and then on and off. And then this year, since it was quarantine, or last year, I'd like to say, that kind of kicked off everything. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should start doing this YouTube thing.
Cool. And what motivated the YouTube versus what you were doing before, which is just making games?
Mm-hmm. So before, I would just work on game dev once a year. Maybe I made a game for a hackathon. I didn't even do game jams that much. So once I started doing YouTube, that was right after the Ludum Dare 46, I think. I just did a devlog for fun, just to see what it was like. And then after that, I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. And people are doing this pretty consistently. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll give this a try and see what I can make.
Nice. And so what was the longest project that you had worked on before you started making YouTube videos? Was it about the same length of effort and time that you do spend now?
Mm-hmm. So right before that, I was working on a mobile game called Rocket Pig. And during that time, I think I worked on it for maybe 4 months. It was supposed to be a revamp of one that I made a couple years ago with my sister. So this time we've revamped all the graphics, made the gameplay a little bit more fun, because before it was lacking something. So we worked on that every day after work. I would have to commute to work and then come back and then work on it. So I was actually pretty happy doing that. It was a good balance of everything. But now that I think about it, I probably could have made that, my game jam games are kind of on the same level as that game now, which is kind of good to see. It comes with experience and you learn how to do things better, more efficiently. And then just seeing what you worked on in this amount of time and then something you worked on a week is kind of comparable to each other. Yeah. That you kind of know that you're growing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, just to see that is kind of nice.
And so what kind of skills? So you're talking about, you're a software engineer. So do you think that there's a difference between the type of code that you write at work versus the type of code that you work for making games, or it's about the same in terms of complexity and I don't know, difficulty?
I would say I've done a lot of game jams by now, not so many long-term game projects. So I would say that my game jam code is way worse than anything I would write at work.
Yeah. That's just bad. You throw everything in there and hope for the best.
Put everything in one file and just get it to work. like your main priority is just to get it to work for a game jam. So I don't really care too much about it. But if I was working on like a bigger term project, I would be careful of like the architecture, how I separate out certain code for the different portions of the game. I would be careful of that. Other than that, I would say it's pretty similar because I do full stack at work. So it's like kind of back end, some front end, making things look good. And game dev is pretty much that, right? Like you're making things work in the back and it has to look good as well. Yeah. So I think it cross applies there.
And I think, so a lot of people, they're always, one of their biggest hesitations when getting into indie dev is the fact that they don't know how to code, right? And that's a very intimidating thing. But you're talking about, right, when you started making games, what took you a month or 4 months, right, with Rocket Pig, now you're saying you can do it in a far shorter amount of time because you've improved. What, if it wasn't the code, what types of things are you able to do a lot faster now and you improve on?
I think it's just like working in Unity for so many times now. You kind of know where everything is. Yeah. You know how to like putting together animations is so easy for me now because I'm like, okay, just make the state machine, walking, idle, like everything. Like that's not even coding, but it's something you have to pick up in Unity, right?
Right.
So like those things are coming to me faster. Just like things like that you pick up and you kind of, it becomes ingrained into your workflow. So some stuff like that.
Yeah. How does your animation state machine look? Is it a web of terrible things? Because that's what mine look like.
Yeah, I haven't done anything super complicated yet, but it usually becomes a web of like going back and forth and all those triggers. Like,
yeah,
it's a lot.
So your YouTube channel, we kind of, I'm gonna have a little preamble before this video releases, talking about how we discovered the meaning of life in our previous chat and everything. You know, we had, but unfortunately, this is not that, right? So we have to redo this conversation. But the last time we were talking about how you had lots of experience doing video editing and overall sound design. You were talking about how that's really impacts the way that you make your videos, and that's definitely obvious, right? Like it's very, everything that's going on the screen when you're on your videos, there's definitely like a sound element to it that like enhances it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Yeah,
sure. So I have been video editing for a while now, so that's something I picked up on my free time as well. In university, I even did like this small series with some of my friends just about it's on YouTube actually.
You gonna plug it?
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna plug it. It was about like engineering reality versus expectation versus reality, and it was supposed to be a parody series, but it was pretty bad, and I messed up like most of the audio like recording. And then it took me a while to edit too, so it was just a mess. But like doing stuff like that, doing projects like that, I worked with some of my friends. They had a really big interest in the film industry, so I like did some acting for them. I did like an action scene, and so I had a lot of experience in like doing different things, directing, acting, those kind of things, just on my free time, just to see like. Pick up from other people some of those skills and see what their input is. That's like really important, I would say, like working in that kind of team dynamic. Yeah. You really pick up a lot of stuff. And then even before that, I did some lyric video editing. So I've kind of dipped my toes in a lot of different areas. And so I still don't know my video style exactly. I think that just comes with consistency as well. Yeah. And actually one thing, since you mentioned the sound design stuff, sometimes I actually start my video editing by putting in sounds.
Just
I
like
do that a
randomly,
lot.
or
No, I like try to imagine like what the visualization would be.
okay.
And then just finding sounds for like each different thing kind of helps me visualize even more.
Mhm.
And then I kind of set up that sound structure and then put like, and then film. I sometimes do that as well, especially the Halloween video that I did.
Yeah.
It was like, it had to like dispense the candy, like go through this, and like the spinner thing would spin. So like even before I created that like flow of things, I found sounds and I made the track first, even before I started like programming everything. So I think like there's no way to actually start your creative process. Like you can start at different sections and then put it all together. Like there's no step by step book on how to do things. Yeah.
So you've done acting, directing, sound design, video editing, game dev, some hardware, some some Halloween special Arduino stuff. What are these other avenues that you're like equally interested in for? You have like game dev stuff, and then you also have this other stuff, or is I mean, there's clearly a merge, right? That your whole channel is kind of about. Are you as interested in some of this other stuff as well?
The directing part, yes, and I think that can apply to game dev as well. I don't think I'm as interested in doing the other things as game dev. Like I feel like it is my main like passion, especially for so long. Like 8 years is when I started my first game, and I just loved it. That's pretty much why I went into software engineering. Actually, I was like considering a game dev field, but then it was easier to go into something more general. But just like trying out different things and keeping things fresh, like even for myself, I kind of like doing that. So that's why I do it.
So you were doing game dev well before you started making videos. And you're definitely a very big part of like all of the Discord communities and also like the YouTube communities that I'm aware of, at least. Is that something that you picked up when you started making videos and you realized, oh, there's a community here? Or is that something that you were already part of the community and you're like, I'm going to give this a shot?
Yeah. So before like quarantine started, I didn't even watch devlogs really. I was just looking for tutorials and stuff like that, right? So the main channels that I knew was probably Brackies, which I'm
yes, I was about to say.
And Blackthorn Prod, he's like a bigger channel, I guess. So I think I knew the bigger channels. Jonas Tyroller, I think those are who I watch because they had some sort of educational aspect to it. So that's where I usually was. And then once quarantine started, I'm like, oh, look at all these people doing devlogs, being consistent with their projects. It's really nice to see. So I just wanted to be more involved.
Who do you like to watch? I mean, obviously there's all the big indie dev people. Who do you like to watch in YouTube just in general? Is there any like channels that you get inspiration for your videos or like you try to emulate their style or anything like that?
I think I said this last time. I don't particularly try to reference any style from another channel. I'm sure it happens subconsciously. Nothing really comes to mind. I watch a lot of like vlogs of people just doing like maybe fashion vlogs or more aesthetic style. I like that kind of style as well. It's very like calming. Who do I watch? Nothing comes to mind right now, but yeah.
So what types of videos on your channel, like how do you decide to make a video of like a particular type of content? Is it because like what type you think is going to get you views and what type of stuff are you like most interested in sharing?
for me, it's easiest to make videos that I'm super interested in. I think that applies to a lot of people. Like if you have no interest in it, you don't really have the motivation kind of to work on that video.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to stick to ideas that I know that I can create like a decent video for. So I usually have like a Trello board of all the different ideas that I have listed. It's pretty long right now, but I haven't been making them.
The lists are always longer than what you're actually able to produce, right?
Yeah. So I think I usually stick to like what I want to make. That's why I'm not too afraid to work on something else, like those Arduino projects. That Halloween video, I guess, didn't do as well as like my game jam videos, but it doesn't really matter to me. I think it was still a fun project.
Yeah. And I think I was talking about this last time with, not with you, but with the Shelfman, that like all these indie dev people, they also have lots of other interests, you know, and you know, that's, I had mentioned you when I was talking about that because you had made the Arduino candy dispenser. And you know, he was also saying that like those types of videos don't really get the views, but it was like something that he thought was fun, and it's something I'm sure, you know, I mean the Halloween dispenser definitely is fun, and yeah. So you know, maybe we should all just be embracing that side more.
I don't think it really hurts. I know like YouTube loves people who are consistent and within the niche. Like YouTube kind of ingrained that in us by now. But I think it's pretty nice to explore different things. Like I think it was Ponty Pants. He started doing like, he does game dev videos, but like devlogs, but he started doing like a gaming week. And then he also did like opening a Japanese what is it, those food boxes, like where you get the snacks. He did one of those just on his channel. Like it's kind of nice to show people who you are. I think that personal aspect of your YouTube channel, like I know most people like to stay anonymous, but if you're going for that personality, it's kind of nice to have a variety of things.
Yeah, and I think probably, you know, it keeps the the viewers on their toes, although I couldn't really say myself.
It's good to experiment though.
So what types of games do you like to play versus the ones that you like to make?
So the games that I like to play usually revolve around a storyline. I think the recent ones that I've been playing were Life is Strange 2. What else was I playing? Anything that usually has a storyline, I'm really interested in. The Tomb Raider reboots, they have a pretty good storyline, and it has like a good mix of things. That's why I really liked it. There's the cinematics, which I really like, and just like you're so invested in the world as well and the characters. So I like that kind of combination. Obviously, those are like AAA games, so I can't really go for making those kind of games. I don't know if I would be interested in doing it. It's very large scope, but keeping like world building and having characters, I like those kind of aspects.
Cool. All right. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I appreciate it. We got the lightning round in.
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks for having this conversation with me.
Yeah. No worries. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Subscribe to Manisha. Anything you want to plug? Twitter. I know you're big on Twitter.
Yeah, I try to post on Twitter. You can follow me at Manisha_W96.
Anything else? Any other social media? Anything else to plug?
No, I don't think so.
All right, cool. All right. See you around.
See ya.